What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video and welcome to your stimulus check update, stimulus package and infrastructure update and daily news report for Wednesday, June 2nd. So, President Biden will use time today to meet with the lead GOP negotiator over the infrastructure package before finally leaving to his beach house for the next couple of days. We know the U.S. Chamber of Commerce says that the worker shortage is real and is not being addressed quickly enough. President Biden and the GOP are currently struggling to find common ground on how the large infrastructure package will finally be paid for. We also know Republicans worried that this past year of additional stimulus has actually given Democrats, or they hope it doesn't, but they say that it's giving Democrats more of a reason to try and introduce universal basic income into our economy. And the president has stated that stimulus is what has caused hunger to stay way down. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now. There's a lot of stuff regarding stimulus, the stimulus checks. So I want to address that in today's video. First off, if you enjoy these daily updates, could you go ahead and hit the like button? It really does help out the channel. Now, let's get into the update for today. Because the U.S. Chamber of Commerce stated the worker shortage is real and is getting worse and worse by the day. Now, a lot of lawmakers are looking into this, are looking into why do we have a worker shortage? And here's what I can tell you. Many look at two numbers. They look at how many people are currently on unemployment and how many jobs are currently available. If the people on unemployment if there's more jobs than people on unemployment, then every single person on unemployment should be able to go and get a job. Those are the two numbers that lawmakers are looking at. Now, those are both good numbers. They both tell a story, but they don't paint the entire picture. Here's what we know. A lot of lawmakers are saying that right now, getting rid of the disincentive of that $300 per week boost, that federal boost, that would actually fix this problem. However, we will see within the next 2 weeks whether or not this is the case. What I can tell you is that the 24 Republican states that will be canceling the federal unemployment benefits, they will know firsthand whether this works and they were successful and all the Republicans were right, or, okay, and that's an option, that's a possibility, or Democrats were right that the $300 per week boost was not a disincentive. People are not staying home because they don't have a job, right? Or they just don't want to go to work because they're making more at home. That's not the case, right? It's going to be one of those two options. Here's what I can tell you. Studies have found that the slight increase in pay, it's ever so slight for the majority of people, for the average worker. Studies have found that the slight increases in pay is not what is driving this decision amongst Americans. What we know is the real issue has to do with schools not being completely open. That is a big factor. If a parent cannot go to work because their child is only in school for half days or only in school on certain days, it makes it very difficult for an employer to hire somebody that can only be there, let's say, 4 hours a day, or can only be there on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, or maybe only Tuesdays and Thursdays. Right? That becomes a big issue. So it actually makes going back to work a little bit harder because some employers aren't going to hire somebody when they have specific requirements that, oh, well, I have to be off at 2:30 because I got to go pick up my kid from school. That is going to be kind of the new norm. That's what we're going to hear. That's what we're going to see quite a bit. And the big one, and this is the biggest one, is that right now affordable childcare is harder to come by. And this is harder to come by because childcare providers have, set rules. They have, restrictions as well, just like every other, place of business. Is you can't be at 100% capacity. If a childcare center used to hold, let's say, 50 children, but now they're cut to only 50%, which would be 25 children, what do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to keep their rates the same? Or do you think their rates go up because they have less children and they still have the same overhead? That's most likely going to happen. So what we know is it's making the decision to not go back to work, and that slight increase in pay to stay at home, it makes more sense if the parent can now care for the children and help them with homework and get them to and from whatever school they have, but at the same time they're still getting paid. So what we know right now is the Biden administration is working on a plan to try to fix these issues. However, these issues are tied up in both the American Jobs Plan and that social plan, the American Families Plan. That's where they're tied up. So if there's no additional child care, there's no child care, stimulus or incentive or tax credits, right? That's where we're going to have some issues. Right now, we do know that for parents, you can get up to 50% of whatever you pay for childcare, as long as it's to a person that's actually claiming that income as on their taxes. So not like a 13-year-old babysitter who's not going to file taxes. That's not going to work. But you can get up to $8,000 per child. So that means for 2 children, you can get up to $16,000. Okay, which is pretty good, pretty substantial. That's a tax credit. So right now, what we know is there's a lot of back and forth as to what is going to be the best option. But what I can tell you right now is this is where today is going to really play into this entire situation, is because today President Biden will meet with the lead negotiator from the GOP, Shelley Moore Capito, and they will discuss infrastructure. President Biden has said that time is running out and that the two sides must come to an agreement. We even know from Sunday that the Transportation Secretary Buttigieg, he said that he wants to the complete plan, and he wants to see this before June 7th, or at least on June 7th, so that he can begin his work just 2 days later when the committee would actually meet. So what I can tell you right now is there is a lot of discussions going on. President Biden has a lot of stuff to do, and some are actually a little bit upset that he's going to go spend 2 days at his beach house. I think this is like his, 13th or 14th time going, pretty much not really going on vacation, but, going up to, was it Vermont or wherever, or to Delaware. And so right now, that's what some are saying, is that, former President Donald Trump used to go to the golf course quite a bit. And current President Biden, he keeps on going up to Delaware. It's kind of the same thing. Not really, but it is what it is. Right now, there's a lot of stuff going on. So some just say, and people are going to argue no matter what, if the president isn't doing his job, then he needs to do a little bit more. He needs to fix things. So here's what I can tell you right now. Right now, the Biden administration and the GOP are trying to find common ground, and they're struggling to find common ground because they have so many different agendas and plans. Democrats want to see additional stimulus. Progressives absolutely want to see stimulus. They say that an additional stimulus check is needed. President Biden mentioned back in May, so last month, a little bit over a month ago, that stimulus is what has caused hunger to stay way down. But yet, ever since he made that statement, there's been little effort to provide additional stimulus to keep hunger way down. In the American Families Plan, that social infrastructure plan, what we know is right now, there's no stimulus check in there. There's no stimulus check in the American Jobs Plan. There's no stimulus check in either one of the infrastructure packages. And there's no stimulus check for either party. But does that mean we're not going to see a stimulus check? Some say yes. Some argue that there's no way we're going to see an additional stimulus check. When you ask Mitch McConnell, he says that he would not support an additional or a fourth stimulus check because it's not needed. The American people don't need it because they have received enough. In the first one, the $1,200 stimulus checks, it's like 75% of the American people use that money to pay for food and essentials, which was needed at that time when everything was shutting down. And then the $600 and the $1,400, we'll just call it the $2,000 stimulus checks, those ones, about 50% of Americans use that to put money into savings and pay off debt. And because of those two things, the savings and pay off debt, that is what many people, as of right now, many Republicans are arguing that, and specifically Mitch McConnell, saying, well, the American people didn't spend it on the right thing, so how can we, in good faith, give them additional stimulus checks when we know what they're going to spend it on? They're going to put more back into savings, put more to pay off debt. Well, here's what some progressives are saying is that even though, yes, it is true that some American people did put money into savings and pay off debt, the reason they had to put money back into savings is because they used it to pretty much pay for the last year of this pandemic. Or, of course, they had to pay off debt because a lot of people are living off of credit cards in order to just survive. That means buying the essentials, buying the necessities, okay? Paying for maybe their gas or their electric bill. People are using credit cards to live, and that is not a smart way to live. Now, if you cannot pay off your credit card every single month before you start racking up that interest, okay, that's where you're going to struggle, because if you couldn't afford things before, then you will not be able to afford things after you get charged interest. It's just going to make things worse. So right now, a lot of people say there needs to be something quickly. We need to get this infrastructure package done immediately. However, we do know that the Biden administration and the GOP cannot they cannot come to common ground and figure out how are we going to pay for this. That is the big thing. What we do know is that the Democratic Party, they want to tax the wealthier individuals. If you make under $400,000 per year, you should not see an increase in taxes. However, you would most likely see an increase in inflation. Everyone's going to be impacted by that. Gas prices, food prices, doesn't matter. Clothing, everything. You will see the effects of inflation. What we do know the other day is that President Biden, he is really open to, he would really like to get this done, is actually to do away with the 1031 exchange. By doing this, according to reports, it would bring in about $20 billion over the next 10 years. I believe it's 10 years, could be 5. Don't quote me on that. But they say that the wealthy will pay. Now, if you don't know what the 1031 exchange is, it's something it was used, I think, back in the day for like farmers. But now, the 1031 exchange is used primarily, real estate investors, people, if you buy a house, all right, we'll just use, just average person. Let's say you go buy a house for $100,000. Let's say 4 or 5 years later, you sell it for $500,000. You would have $400,000 that you should be paying capital gains tax on. However, within 6 months, if you take that $400,000 and you go and buy another property, let's say you go buy a $2 million home, right? And you put down the $400,000. Okay, great. You just spent that $400,000. So technically, the 1031 exchange is pretty much telling you that, okay, you had $400,000 in capital gains tax, but then you bought a bigger, more expensive property, $400,000. So you now have this $2 million property that you owe $1.6 million on because you put $400,000 down. Great. So what I can tell you right now is that you don't owe any capital gains tax because you spent it on the next thing. So that's the 1031 exchange. And that's actually it's one of those things that a lot of very wealthy individuals do use. Anybody in real estate will use that. And if you don't, you're making a huge mistake. It's a great little tax benefit. So here's the other thing that I want to address. Because right now, over the past year, we have seen $3,200 in stimulus checks go out to the American people. We've seen boatloads of money go out to people on unemployment. We've seen a lot of money go out to people for nutrition assistance, mortgage, and rental assistance as well. What we know is that currently Republicans are worried that this past year of stimulus check after stimulus check is giving Democrats more of a reason to try and introduce universal basic income into the economy. Republicans are saying that right now it's difficult to try to persuade the American people that universal basic income doesn't work because, and this isn't every Republican, but this is kind of the common consensus, is right now the American people see stimulus works. Providing for the American people, trickle up economics, it's working. And maybe it's working because of the pandemic. Maybe it's working because people were just, thrown for a loop. They didn't know what to do when they lost their job, when stores were closing down, when restaurants were not open, when grocery stores, you had to almost wait in line just to get in. And if you went in to try to find any type of paper product like napkins, paper towels, toilet paper, you were screwed because there was nothing. This was a difficult time. But Republicans worry that with this additional stimulus, it's going to open the door for Democrats to try to introduce universal basic income. And some say that this will actually be a disincentive. And if we want to stay competitive, especially against China, we cannot offer universal basic income. The reason why the United States is, where it is, and people work so hard, businesses are very successful, is because we are not giving a handout. If you want what the other people do not have, you have to do what they're not willing to do. Right now, some people would rather go and work a 9-to-5 job, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, what some say is that if we want to build a better economy, we cannot all go and get a 9-to-5 job. That's not going to create competitiveness with China. So, what we know is universal basic income is going to be talked about. We're going to hear more and more chatter on that. The talks of a stimulus check are going to happen. I said this the other day. As soon as we get some type of agreement, whether it's we're going to go with an infrastructure package that is bipartisan, or we're going to go with a budget reconciliation with just Democrats, once we have an idea of which path we're taking, it's going to be so much easier to figure out, is a stimulus check even coming? And then once we see on June 12th, okay, in 10 days, once we see the federal unemployment boost end in, I think, 3 states on June 12th, what's going to happen is the week after that, and probably the next couple weeks, is we're going to start to hear more talks on we need stimulus checks, we need additional assistance, because you're taking away the lifeline, the income for millions of Americans. And so right now what we know is that this is not going to play out well. And I stated in the beginning of this video, it could either go good and there was no disincentive to go back to work, or that Democrats were right and there is a disincentive. That's the reason why American people are not going back to work, or the Republicans say that. And so right now it's going to be one of those two options. And so we will see what happens. But as always, as I know more, I promise I'll come back on and share more. Just want to thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. If you have any questions, please ask your questions down in the comment section below. Remember, there are still scammers out there trying to get you to send them a message on WhatsApp. They will try to get you to pay them with Bitcoin. I do not ask you to pay me, especially with a cryptocurrency. I do not ask you to send me a message on WhatsApp. I don't even use WhatsApp. Okay? If you want to get a hold of me, you can send me an email. Now, if you have any questions, please ask your questions down in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.